which we looked at 2 John in detail, and then Old Testament, I only have 1 or 2 slides, and then we'll focus more specifically on Psalms, and in particular, Psalm 22. And then next week, I'm really, really excited. We are going to start off with David and Goliath, and I am going into extreme, minute detail, because we got to combat this professor who thinks he knows better than the eyewitness 3,000 years ago who was there on the spot, who actually wrote what happened. So you guys are going to miss it because you got somewhere to go, right? All right, you'll tune in. All right, so I'm excited. David and Goliath. I need a prop. I need somebody who can stand in to have a battle. How tall is this? Are you good on stilts? Yeah, that'd be fun. We should do a reenactment. That'd be cool. All right.
We'll have Benai be David.
Yeah, that could. Yeah, but actually, don't give him any rocks or slings. He has good aim.
Hey, he can't miss his 4 slides and give it to him.
Yeah. All right. So, let me give you just this. I timed this out. It's about 10 minutes, but let me give this, and then we'll push play on these 2 praise songs. So, I think I showed this before. This is a good breakdown of the 66 books in the Bible. You got the New Testament on the right, Old Testament on the left. You'll see the 5 books of the law up top. Then you got a whole bunch of books of history, historical books. Then you have 5 books of poetry, and Psalms is one of the 5 books of poetry in pink. Then you got major prophets and minor prophets. So that's a good breakdown of the Old Testament. Law, history, and poetry, and the prophets, major and minor prophets. And then here's another slide, just looking at it from a different perspective. But I like this one the best. All right. So we call it the Book of Psalms. Psalms actually contains 150 poems, prayers, or worship songs, and these are designed for public or private worship. And interestingly, the book of Psalms is quoted more often in the New Testament than any other book in the Old Testament. 35 of the Psalms are mentioned in the New Testament. So it's very popular, and it's very prophetic. Some of the things that were written in Psalms apply specifically to the Messiah, and that's what we're going to look at more today. In the synagogue, Psalms were recited. They were assigned to be read on special days throughout the year. They were used as a foundation for prayer, and they were used as songs. Most of the Psalms were set to music. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of that today, but it's a modern artist's rendition of those lyrics. Now, in regard to the authors, you have 150, remember? So 73 of these are specifically attributed to King David. 13 of these have historical information attached to the actual psalm that give you a context of why it was written. For example, this is not, well, I should maybe use an actual example. So if David is hiding out in a cave and he's just narrowly escaped King Saul and his army who was trying to hunt him down and find him, he wrote a psalm to describe how the Lord protected him and kept him safe in the midst of a difficult, So some of these psalms have historical information attached. Some of the psalms, many of them were written so when King David came to power, he had 3 worship leaders under him, 3 of them. Korah, Asaph, and Jeduthun. And these 3 men functioned under David. David was a very skilled musician. He wrote many songs. He played. He could play multiple. He even created musical instruments. All right, the Bible tells us. So these 3 men functioned as his worship leaders in the temple under him. And they wrote. Now, Moses actually wrote one of the Psalms, and Solomon has 2 of them, Psalm 72 and 127. So that's interesting. And then there's a number of them that don't have any name at all, no recognized author. Now, there's 7 basic types of Psalms. The first is a Psalm of lament. So if you're in grief, you're struggling with something, lament, you're crying out to the Lord because of difficulties in your life. That's probably the most common type of psalm of the 150. And there's corporate ones where Israel's saying, God, where are you? We're being defeated by our enemies. Show up, help us. We're being crushed, we're being deported, we're being captured. And then there's individual ones where this is more of on a personal level of a personal struggle with the Lord. Now, there's psalms of praise and thanksgiving, again, on a corporate level where all of Israel is saying, this psalm is written from the perspective of Israel herself, saying, God rescued us through, He brought us out of Egypt. He brought us through the Red Sea. He closed up the waters on the army of Pharaoh. That would be a psalm of praise and thanksgiving on a corporate level, or again, on an individual level as well. Psalms of trust, expressing trust in God. Wisdom. Psalms of Torah, or on the law. Imprecatory psalms, which are psalms of judgment. Like, Ron did something mean to me. He's my enemy. He's out to get me. He's falsely accusing me. And I'm praying, God, bring judgment on his head. So there's some psalms, there's some prayer or songs that are songs of judgment, prayers of judgment. And then the last one, and this is what we're going to look at an example of this today, is royal psalms. These are psalms that speak of an earthly king or a heavenly king or both. And we're going to look at one that speaks of both today. It can apply to both King David and then the ultimate heavenly king, the Messiah, Jesus. All right? So the basic question in coming to the Psalms, I usually ask, like, okay, who's speaking? Who's the author? Is it a personal or is it corporate? Is he talking about himself or is he talking about the nation of Israel? What's the purpose of the psalm? Is it a lament? You kind of think about the emotional orientation. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they struggling? What's the emotional orientation? What's the genre of the psalm of those 7 that I gave you? And then are there any repeating phrases? So I noticed as we were singing, great is thy faithfulness and just when I need him most, you know how every one of our songs has a repeating phrase, the refrain. Same thing in the Psalms. A lot of those have repeating phrases. And like Psalm 136, it might say, and the Lord delivered us from bondage in Egypt. And then the people respond with the refrain, his love endures forever. The Lord provided water in the desert. His love endures forever. And so it would go back and forth. And that was the kind of song where the choir master or the worship leader would do the first part and the people would respond with the second part. And the last thing I'll say, this is the last point I'll make, is one of the distinctives in the Psalms in Hebrew poetry is synonymous parallelism, which is basically stating an idea, and then on the next line you state the idea again, just with different words. So it's kind of a compounding. You say something, and then you say it again with slightly different words. Then you say a new concept, and you say it again with slightly different words. And we find this all the time in the Psalms. So here's an example. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is my stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the works of his hands. See, it's kind of building on one another, but it's very similar. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. And their voice goes into all the earth. This is the second line. Their words to the ends of the world. So, slightly different wording, but same concept in each one of those verses. Line 1, line 2. Line 1, line 2. So, let me, I'm going to exit out of this. I think I can, yeah. And would you be willing to turn to Psalm 121? Because that's the first one we're going to sing. Psalm 121, it's only 8 verses. I'll read that one, and then we'll sing it, and then we'll transition right into Psalm 91, I think. And I'll play both of those. We can sing along, or you can just kind of listen to it in a reflective manner. But Psalm 121, Psalm 121 is what we're going to look at first. All right. And I'm going to, yeah.